Are Social Security benefits subject to the income tax? Yes, kind of. Um, I actually really hate this policy. I mean, dislike. I actively dislike this policy. But first, yes, kind of. If your income from as a Social Security beneficiary from other sources that aren't Social Security, like investment income from a 401k, if that income is high enough, a portion of your Social Security benefits can be subject to the income tax. The reason why I say kind of is because the schedule of the income tax rate is set by Congress. It's what we all pay, but the portion of your tax contribution that is on the Social Security benefit goes back to Social Security. So Congress is not taxing Social Security benefits and then keeping that money to spend on other things. If you pay taxes on Social Security, the income tax rate is set by congressional, income tax rates, but the actual money that you put in is kind of portioned off by the IRS and then sent back to Social Security. And so it's going back into the program as a source of revenue. It is basically rich beneficiaries are taxed, and that tax helps finance the program. It does not go into kind of the discretionary fund at Congress. As a policy, it was started in the 1983 reform, which was bipartisan and was signed into law by President Reagan. It was a mix of tax increases and benefit cuts, but you know, the reason why we have this policy is because they were looking for revenue sources, right? They needed more money to fund the program, and so taxing rich beneficiaries, seemed like a reasonable thing to do. I will say, as a policy, it's not discordant with Social Security's basic principles of insurance. This is a program that protects against the risk of economic insecurity and poverty in old age. People who are very rich in retirement, that the risk of economic insecurity is low. And so kind of clawing back a portion of their benefits, in the years that they are rich and using them to pay for other beneficiaries and putting it back into the program, right? It doesn't, you know, it's still in line with the principles of social insurance. I will also say that it has, at least some cleverness in how it determines who is rich, and that it allows people to be basically reassessed every year, right? Most people will be richest in their life on the day that they retire. And then as they start to, kind of live off their savings and draw down their investment income, they basically get poorer every year that they live. For the most part, there's lots of exceptions. But if you look at the average income of someone who is, say, 67 versus someone who is, say, 87, it is markedly lower because people run out of their private savings. And so what I appreciate about the tax on rich beneficiaries is that rich is not a permanent designation, right? It depends solely on your income in a given year, so that if something does happen to your private savings in retirement, you go right back to getting your full benefit and they're not taxed at all. And that type of flexibility for changing economic circumstances in retirement, I think is very important if we are going to have something like a tax on rich beneficiaries. The reason why I strongly dislike this benefit is that the designation of rich may change based on someone's income every year, but the actual cutoff as established by Congress has not changed since 1983. It's $25,000 for an individual filer. So if your income from other sources plus half of your Social Security benefit is above $25,000, you are rich enough to pay taxes on your benefit. That $25,000 cutoff was set in 1983. And 40 years later, in 2023, it is still $25,000. I think that this is very much beneath the standards of Social Security as a program to have something like a, you know, erosion in standards over, or an erosion in determination over time. In 1983, the average retiree benefit was around $5,200 a year. So this cutoff for being a rich person in retirement was 5 times the average benefit. Today, the average Social Security beneficiary in retirement has about $22,000 of income. So now our determination of rich is about at the average of what people take home. I don't like policy via inaction, right? This is a determination of who is rich and who has to be taxed and their benefits, based on an erosion of standards and inaction over time. It is not cohere with how Social Security operates in almost every other aspect of the program, how it adjusts for wages, how it calculates the benefit, how it calculates the inflation adjustment. All of these things change in each year in accordance with the change in prices and wages, because it's the program that could span, 70 years of your life. And it has to take into account that the economy changes over that time period. And it does in almost every single way, except the $25,000 cutoff for an individual filer to be quote unquote rich enough and able to pay taxes. For a married couple, it's 32. That is why I dislike it. It's not the principle that maybe we should tax rich beneficiaries. I think it's the kind of creep and just having more and more people default into being rich because we have a fixed standard that eroded over time.